Welcome to Mental Flight, where bold ideas take off and untold truths soar beyond the limits of ordinary thinking. Then fasten your mind, you're cleared for takeoff. For months, the tension between Burkina Faso and Ecowas has been building like a storm on the horizon. Every statement, every warning, every threat felt like a weight pressing down on a nation that simply wanted its freedom. And at the center of it all stood a young, determined leader, Ibrahim Traoré, a man who carried not just the voice of his people, but also the dream of an Africa free from outside control. He spoke with conviction, with fire, with the kind of courage that comes from knowing you have nothing left to lose except your chains. At first, Ecowas tried to stand tall, flexing its authority, condemning and warning as if Burkina Faso would bow under pressure. But something unexpected happened. Instead of backing down, Traoré pushed back harder. His words cut through the noise. His actions spoke louder than decades of broken promises from the so-called regional powers. He wasn't just another politician. He was a fighter, a soldier, and a believer in a cause far greater than himself. And now, almost unbelievably, Ecowas has bent. The very body that once condemned him has had to acknowledge the strength of his movement. It's not just a political victory, it's a moral one. For the people of Burkina Faso, this moment feels like justice. For Africans watching across the continent, it feels like hope. Young leader, once underestimated, has made giants bow. You can almost imagine the pride in the streets, the whispers of change spreading across borders. This isn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. This is about every African who has ever dreamed of standing tall without fear of punishment from organizations that often served interests beyond their own people. Traoré has lit a fire, and it's burning brighter with every step. History doesn't often give us moments where the underdog rises so quickly, but when it does, you can feel the shift in the air. Right now, that shift is happening in West Africa, whether Ecowas likes it or not. The tide has turned. Ibrahim Traoré's resilience has become one of the most defining forces in West African politics today. When Ecowas first condemned his rise to power, many expected him to crumble under the weight of sanctions, isolation, and diplomatic pressure. Yet what the world witnessed instead was a young leader who refused to bend. A man who carried himself with the conviction that his fight was not just for himself but for the soul of his nation. This resilience has now forced Ecowas to rethink its stance, shifting from harsh words of condemnation to a more cautious and respectful posture. In the early days, the messages from Ecowas were clear and unforgiving. They painted Traoré as another soldier hungry for power, another figure disrupting the so-called democratic order. But those who truly looked closer saw something different. They saw a leader standing tall in the face of immense adversity. A leader who embodied the frustrations of ordinary Burkinabe citizens who had suffered years of exploitation, insecurity, and neglect. He didn't just talk about sovereignty. He lived it, carrying himself with the boldness of a man who knew the weight of history was on his shoulders. The resilience he displayed wasn't just about defiance. It was about strategy. Traoré carefully navigated alliances, building new partnerships, while reassuring his people that their sacrifices were not in vain. Instead of succumbing to the pressure, he turned every challenge into a moment of strength. When Ecowas threatened, he tightened his bond with the people. When critics tried to undermine him, he reminded his nation that this struggle was not about pleasing outsiders, but about reclaiming dignity and control. This determination began to shift the balance. Ecowas, which had once been confident in its condemnations, found itself facing a new reality. The young leader they dismissed was not only still standing, but gaining influence. His presence at the heart of Burkina Faso's political and social transformation was too powerful to ignore. People began to rally behind him, not just in his country, but across the region. He became a symbol of resistance, a figure that represented the courage to stand firm, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The emotional impact of this resilience cannot be understated. For ordinary citizens, seeing their leader resist Ecowas and refuse to bow down became a source of pride. It wasn't just about politics anymore, it was about identity, about a people finding their voice again after years of being spoken for. This is what forced Ecowas to pause, to reconsider, ultimately to shift. They could not silence the willpower of an entire nation embodied in the figure of one determined man. This moment marks more than just a political win. It is a moral and symbolic victory that speaks directly to the heart of Burkina Faso and to the broader dream of Africa's sovereignty movement. For too long, African nations have been seen as pawns in someone else's game, forced into compliance, dictated by outside powers, and stripped of the dignity to choose their own path. But with Ibrahim Traoré holding firm and Ecowas shifting its stance, something larger is happening. It is a statement to the world that Africa is no longer willing to be a silent participant, is reclaiming its own story. For the people of Burkina Faso, this is deeply personal. Every man, woman, and child who has endured poverty while watching their country's wealth flow outward knows the pain of exploitation. Every farmer who works under the scorching sun, every mother who struggles to feed her family, every young person searching for hope, they all carry the weight of this struggle. To them, Traoré's defiance and resilience feel like a reflection of their own suppressed voices, finally breaking free. His leadership has become a symbol of pride, a reminder that no matter how small a country may appear on the global stage, it carries the right to dignity and self-determination. The symbolic power of this moment reaches beyond borders. Across Africa, other nations are watching, quietly inspired, some openly moved. They see a leader standing against the tide of external dominance, and it sparks something familiar within them, longing for sovereignty, for freedom, for a future where their children are not born into dependence, but into empowerment. Victory is not just Burkina Faso's alone. It belongs to every African who has ever questioned why their continent remains shackled by decisions made in foreign capitals. What makes this moment so powerful is the shift in narrative. For decades, Africa has often been portrayed as weak, divided, or incapable of charting its own destiny. But here, in the resilience of one nation and its young leader, the script is being rewritten. The symbolism of Burkina Faso refusing to bow carries a ripple effect, reminding the world that sovereignty is not just a political term, it is an emotional human cry for respect. It is about a continent saying, "We are not second class. We are not voiceless. We are here, and we demand to be heard." This victory resonates like a heartbeat across Africa. It is filled with emotion, carrying with it generations of pain and generations of hope. It says that sovereignty is not some lofty dream, it is possible. And it begins with small victories that blossom into powerful symbols. For Burkina Faso, for its people, and for the broader African sovereignty movement, this moment will be remembered not as a passing event, but as a chapter where the tide began to turn in their favor. Traoré's leadership is not just about politics. Energy, spirit, and the way it is igniting something far bigger than Burkina Faso itself. Across Africa, his rise and his refusal to bend to outside pressure are becoming a beacon for millions who have long felt voiceless and powerless. It is rare to see such a young leader stand so tall, so unapologetically firm, against powers that for decades dictated the rhythm of African nations. That kind of courage is contagious. It spreads across borders, not through formal speeches or conferences, but through whispers, conversations, and the quiet stirring of hope in the hearts of ordinary people. For so long, Africans have been told that resistance is futile, that dependency is inevitable, that foreign control is simply the way of the world. But Traoré's leadership has shaken that belief. He shows in real time that a nation can stand its ground. He proves that even when pressure mounts, sovereignty is not just an abstract dream, it is something worth defending. In marketplaces, in villages, in crowded cities, the very mention of his name carries weight. It sparks pride. It makes people feel that perhaps they, too, can demand more from their governments, from their leaders, and from those who have taken advantage of them for far too long. The wave of hope he is inspiring is deeply emotional. It is not just about policies or reforms. It is about dignity. It is about the right of Africans to chart their own future without interference. That sense of defiance, of saying no to exploitation and yes to independence, is powerful because it cuts through fear. For years, fear has silenced nations. Fear of sanctions, fear of isolation, fear of retaliation. Yet here is a leader, young, muscular, unyielding, standing before the world saying, "We will not bow." And that example is unlocking courage. In others, in countries near and far, young Africans are watching closely. They see in Traoré someone they can relate to, not an old, distant figure, but a leader who speaks with the fire of youth, who embodies both strength and vulnerability, who reminds them that leadership is not reserved for those who conform to old rules. His presence tells them that change is possible, that their generation can rise, that Africa's future does not have to be dictated by outsiders. That kind of hope cannot be contained within borders. It spreads like fire, unpredictable and unstoppable. This growing wave of defiance does not mean recklessness, it means awakening. It is the birth of a new narrative across the continent. One where Africans are reclaiming pride in their identity, their culture, and their right to self-determination. Traoré has become more than a president. He has become a symbol of what Africa could be if it embraced its own strength and rejected the chains of control. That inspiration is fueling a continental movement. One voice at a time, one heart at a time. When together, it is shaping a tide too strong to ignore. If you believe Africa's future should be decided by Africans and you want to be part of this journey, then make sure you hit subscribe. Drop a like to push this story further and share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voice in this conversation.